Hello everybody, it's Mark, back with another video to make you laugh, to make you cry. Hopefully we'll do more laughing than crying, yeah. So, we're going to watch a video by Plant-Based Science London. Now, I'm not a vegan, not a vegetarian. I eat meat, lean meat, but I like this channel and I like I don't know the lady that runs the channel, but she does good work. I like watching it, but it's on carbs do not make you fat. Did you know that? Did you know that carbs do not readily turn into fat? It's the best news ever, because at one point in my life, I believed the exact opposite. And there seems to be a whole movement out there today that seems to believe this, but I mean, there's proof to the contrary. And there's no proof for it. And we know for a fact that almost all the stored body fat you have came from dietary fat. Now, I'll prove it. We'll come to that in a second. Let's watch this video. This video is quite short, so we'll dig into this first and I'll come back with more at the end.
In this video, Dr. Klaper is hopefully going to blow your mind and change the way you view carbohydrates. Before we hear from him, we need to look at the pathway for converting carbs into fat, which is called de novo lipogenesis. And here's the thing, it appears that de novo lipogenesis rarely occurs. In this interesting study, researchers provided all the food and actually overfed subjects by 50% above their maintenance calories in 6 dietary phases, ranging from 50% surplus carbohydrate to 50% deficient carbohydrate and 50% surplus fat. The scientists were then able to decipher where the stored body fat came from, either fat or carbs. And here's the amazing thing, they found only 1.4% of the fat that the subjects gained was directly from carbohydrates, while 98.6% came from dietary fat. And this has been backed up by these studies, which also showed that de novo lipogenesis is inefficient for the body and carbohydrates rarely contribute to fat gain. So why does this happen? Well, when you eat carbs, they can be burned for energy right away, or stored in your liver and muscles in a form of glycogen, and in the blood in a form of blood sugar. And an average person can store around 600 grams of glycogen before de novo lipogenesis starts to happen. So now let's hear from Dr. Klaper, and then we'll come back and look at one exception to this.
Carbohydrates, one of my favorite molecules. Why is it my favorite? Because it is the main fuel that our body uses. We are carbohydrate burning organisms. And the beauty about carbohydrates is they are a clean burning fuel. As you metabolize them, the only thing you get is carbon dioxide that you breathe off and water that you excrete in the urine. So when I hear carbs or bad carbs, it grates on me a bit. And what are they talking about? Because carbohydrates that you eat in whole plant food, you eat a corn, a plate of rice, a sweet potato, you're going to take in lots of carbohydrates. Oh, they're going to turn into fat. No, they will not. Carbohydrates will not turn into fats in their whole form. The first thing will happen if you eat rice or potatoes is that the sugars making those starches up flow through your tissues, and the stored sugar, the glycogen in our muscles, if it's been depleted during the day, the sugars that we eat replete the glycogen stores in our muscles. That's great. But what if your glycogen stores are already full and you have a big plate of rice and potatoes? What will happen? What will happen is that the temperature of your blood will go up a quarter of a degree, eighth of a degree. In bed that night, you'll stick your foot out from under the covers, or you'll throw the covers off, and you'll radiate that heat, that extra energy off to the air as heat. It will not turn into fat. Too many enzymatic steps for that to happen. So carbs will not turn into fat.
Hello there, I'm Mark, former low carber turned high carb, low fat, and loving it. I'm producing the results of my life in my mid-40s. Now consider liking and subscribing, and please get my free book, Eat Lean, Get Lean. You will get lean and you will stay that way for the rest of your life. Thank you. Yeah. Now he touches on something very, very important here that I cover in my book. So I want to bring up a graphic from my free book, Eat Lean, Get Lean. If you haven't got it yet, folks, please go get it. It's very good. It doesn't take very long to read. It's also quite entertaining. I made it kind of fun to read. And it's full of stuff like this that will, if you don't know it already, it'll blow your mind and it'll make you very, very happy, because you'll realize that you can eat carbs now and for the rest of your life, because we human beings want to eat carbohydrate. You ever wonder why we want to so much? Why is it we crave carbs? You crave them because you're supposed to. People sort of think that nature is working against them by making them crave glucose. Your body needs glucose. Even people on low carb diets are turning protein into glucose because the body needs the glucose so much. So it's no surprise that your body is seeking out glucose. It would rather you just give it a direct form. So it would rather you just eat some starch. So that's why it's telling you, go get some glucose. People on low carb diets can't stick to them forever because you will give in to your cravings eventually. You don't have cravings on a high carb, low fat diet. So anyway, I'm going to put this graphic up on screen. This is from page 9. If you have my book, it's on page 9. The title is Don't Carbs Turn into Fat? So I'm speaking to future me in the future, future Mark. Listen, when you're editing the video, remember to put the graphic up on screen, because sometimes I make these videos and I tell myself, okay, remember to put that thing up, and I forget to put it up. So future Mark, get this right. So it should be on screen now, and the title is Don't Carbs Turn into Fat? And I say, not really. Carbohydrates are not readily turned into fat. And we have carbohydrate overfeeding studies to prove this. Now, the video from Plant-Based Science London just touched on one of those overfeeding studies. And what happens over and over and over again, when you overfeed people fat, excess fat is stored as fat. If you feed another group the same calories, let's say it's 4,000, 5,000, both groups, but the predominance of those excess calories are carbohydrate, they either sometimes put on zero extra body fat or a little bit. And by the way, the little bit will still come from mostly the small bit of dietary fat that they consumed. And there can be a little bit of de novo lipogenesis, which is turning carbs into fat, a little bit. And I'm going to talk you through why it's only a little bit. Why is it that all those carbs don't turn into fat? Why is it that the human body is so inefficient at getting this done? And let me say this first. Whenever they do these overfeeding studies, it's so difficult to make people even get, say, 5,000 calories, mostly of carbohydrates, because carbs are so filling. We're talking about pure carb sources here. So there has to be starches predominantly. You could never do it. Do you really think that you could eat 5,000 calories of potatoes? Once you get to about 2,000, you would be so full that you can't eat anymore. It becomes, the word that I always use is starches are self-limiting. And the diet that I recommend is starch-based. So what they have to do is they have to give people sugar in order to hit that level, because you can't get it done. So they give people a meal and a big sugar drink, another meal and a big sugar drink in order to get to the 5,000 calories. The fat overfeeding group, they have no problem at all eating 5,000 calories, because you've got butter, mayonnaise, you've got oils of all varieties, you've got cheeses and nuts. You can get 5,000 calories in quite easily. Which, there are people on YouTube, I'm going to make a video on this in the future, who are saying that they eat unlimited fat and they don't store it as body fat. And this becomes, they're encouraging other people then to do this. It's not just wrong, it is bloody dangerous, and they should stop. There are a couple of women, especially on YouTube, saying that they eat, or you can eat unlimited fat, and so long as your carbs are low, it doesn't store as fat. This is bollocks of the highest order, and they should stop doing that. And I'm going to prove them completely wrong in a future video, maybe my next video, I don't know. But excess fat is always stored as body fat, because it has nowhere else to go. There's only so much fat you can burn in any given day, and whatever constitutes an excess must be stored in fat cells. There is nowhere else in the human body for it to go. I'll make a longer video. Now, back to don't carbs turn into fat. So we'll have these overfeeding studies, and always the high carb group, puts on a lot less fat than the high fat group, if anything at all. And I reference a study where they overfed people 1,000 excess calories in a high carb, low fat context, and it resulted in, I quote, no detectable fat being created from carbohydrate in adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is your body fat. Okay, now let's look at this diagram, and this is the process by which carbs can turn into fat, and it shows just how bloody difficult this is. And there's several stages. It's like this whole machinery to get carbs to turn into fat, whereas excess fat is just moved straight into the fat cells. You don't get these buffers, as I call them, that prevent carbs turning into fat. Okay, so at the bottom we have the red one, which is you have to eat your maintenance calories. Just eating what you need will not store fat from any source. Even dietary fat won't store as fat if you're eating at maintenance. So if you're someone who needs 2,000 calories, if you add 2,000 calories in a given day, no carbs, obviously carbs will not turn into fat. Even when it's, like me, 70% of your calories coming from carbohydrate. But what if you overeat carbohydrates then, and you eat, well, like in that study, 1,000 calories over, so now you're eating 3,000 calories, and all of those surplus calories came from carbohydrate, you still will not turn carbs into fat. Why? Will they be stored? Absolutely. The carbs will be stored, but they'll be stored as a molecule called glycogen in the muscles and liver, and the average person has about 600 grams of storage capacity. So just like fat storage capacity is fat. It's fat. When you overeat fat, it goes where it's stored and straight into fat cells. Carbs have a big storage container. And when you overeat carbs, it goes where it gets stored. And it gets stored in the muscles and liver. And you have a capacity there of 600. If you're a really big guy, say, and you're really muscular and athletic, this can be up to about 1,000 grams worth. So if you ever know bodybuilders getting ready for a competition and they have to carb up before the competition, it's not easy to fill the glycogen up. They really have to go for it and push those carbs and keep the fat ultra low. So most people will not get this done. This is why you don't convert. This is why when body fat is analysed, it's seen to be almost entirely, it came from dietary fat, about 99%, because the average person is not even filling up their glycogen in order to even get to a point where it can convert into fat. The average person is storing fat as fat. They're not turning carbs into fat. So that's your first buffer, as I call it. You eat to maintenance, you overeat carbohydrate, you've got this big storage container of, say, 600 grams, which is 2,400 calories worth of carbs that you can store. Even if your glycogen tanks, storage containers are half full, folks, that still gives you 1,200 calories worth of carbs that can be stored, and you're not turning them into fat. Okay, now, but what would happen in the unlikely, infrequent situation where you do really go for it and you fill up your glycogen tanks and then you spill over, let's say. Okay, at that point, you can start to turn carbs into fat, but there's a huge limiter placed on it. Carb oxidation, which is turning carbs into energy, just ramps up, and it ramps up significantly. As the doctor said in that video we just watched, you'll notice your body temperature goes up. You stick your foot out of the bed at night, you're in bed, you're too warm, you got to get your foot out. You'll notice your temperature increases. This is a sign, an indicator that your body is ramping up its metabolism, it's burning off the carbs. Well, why is it burning them off instead of just converting them to fat? Because it's so difficult. Go look at a glucose molecule, then look at a fatty acid, and you'll notice they're nothing like each other. They're completely different. So it's not easy for the human body to do this. Okay, so You've increased carb oxidation, preventing, limiting the amount of de novo lipogenesis that can actually occur. But let's say then you've still got a little bit that's actually turning into fat. You have another buffer here kicks in. This is your third buffer, really. You've got whatever is left over, whatever is turning into fat, about 23% of those carbohydrate calories are lost in the conversion process because it's so difficult to do. Okay, so this explains the whole inefficiency of turning carbs into fat. Yeah, so let's go through it again. Your buffers. You have to eat at maintenance. That's your just baseline. First buffer kicks in. You overeat carbohydrates. They're stored as glycogen in the muscle and liver. The average person probably won't even fill this up. If you do, second buffer, increased carb burning, increased carb oxidation, just burning it off. De novo lipogenesis will occur, if at all, if there's a smidgen left over. But of that, you still lose a further 23% of those calories. I mean, it's like you can load in all these potatoes in one end of this machine and out the other end of this machine. After it goes through these three buffers, you get like a little droplet of oil coming out the other end. That's the way that I sort of visualize this. Is potatoes going in at this end, and then the machine's pumping away. It's going through all these buffers, each three. Glycogen, increased carb oxidation, 23% of the calories lost in the conversion. These three buffers, and you get a little droplet of oil coming out the other end. So, I hope that explains it. Because people always talk in videos in generalities about how inefficient the body is at for carbs turning into fat. I want to actually explain what that means. That's what it is. And it's all explained in my book. If you haven't got it yet, please go get it. Can I say it's awesome if it's my own book? If I wrote it, am I allowed to say that? But I think you'll like it. And I think it's, like a lot of people have told me, it's life-changing, and it will change your life for the better. You'll get lean. I'm going to say this, you only need to get lean once if you eat like this. Because you can't put it back on. You can't put it back on because everything I just told you, carbs don't turn into fat readily. So even if on the times where you overeat, it's not going to turn into fat. So you can't get fat again. I'm going to do a video on that as well, by the way. That's a very good topic. You only need to get lean once. Now let me see if I want to cover anything else on this. I think that'll do. If you want more on this, carbs don't turn into fat, get the book. And page 9 is the second section, don't carbs turn into fat, for a bit more detail on it. But yeah, when people, I'll say this before we end, a lot of people who say are now low carb and they have lost weight, sometimes what they'll say is, I had high carb and it made me fat. Now, they don't mean what they think they mean. They had a standard American or standard Western diet, which is 30 to 40% fat. So they were eating pancakes and cookies and pizza and things, and even fries. And they call these foods carbs. So when they get fat, they say carbs made me fat. It wasn't. You were eating carbs, but you're eating high fat as well. Your diet was high fat, high carb, and even high sugar. A lot of those carbs were sugar carbs, and combining that with fat. And what you did, because this is what the human body does, is storing, when you went into an excess of calories, your body takes the fat and stores it as fat, because the body always does the most efficient thing with what you give it. The fat goes into fat cells. Carbs are not converted into fat because it's bloody difficult. Okay? So it will always just do the most easiest and most efficient thing. So that's why these people say, well, I had carbs and I got fat. No, you ate donuts and you got fat. You ate high fat foods. Then you removed a large section of your calories. You cut out an entire macro, carbohydrate, and your calories dipped into a deficit and you lost weight. It was not the carbs that made you fat in the first place. That's the important thing. Now, what are we up to? God, I can talk. 19 minutes. I thought that was about 7 minutes. Okay. If you made it to 19 minutes, comment 19 minutes. There'll probably be one person. But if you made it this far, God love you. God bless you. Thanks for staying with me this long. And I'll see you on the next one. I love you, and there's nothing that you can do about it.